Chapter 328 to 330. Before Gurren could recollect her wits, Anko used the fact she was gripping her wrist and jerked her forward, unbalancing her. Normally, that wouldn't have been a problem for an experienced kunoichi, but Gurren was quite distraught, and the move worked, making her stumble forward. Before anyone could react, Anko's free hand snapped forward, smashing into Gurren's midsection. The force behind the blow was massive, but so controlled, Gurren wasn't sent flying because it washed through her in a manner that only affected the organs in her stomach before leaving her body through her lower back. This caused the woman to bend over Anko's fist and release a silent scream of pain. Her intestines instantly liquefied, and a resounding snap announced to the world that her spine broke too. Both Anko and Gurren knew better, though. The part of Gurren's spine located on her lower back broke in 7 different places, completely paralyzing her. To be honest, Anko thought Gurren should be glad she controlled the force behind her punch enough to go around her spine, otherwise it would have liquefied too. Alas, after seeing Gurren's abilities, Anko deemed her too precious to just kill. Capturing her and sending her to the village on the other side through Lady Tsunade would earn her more benefits. If Gurren decided to cooperate and join the other-sided village, that was not Anko's problem. She knew well that everybody had their price. It was only the question if the other-sided village had the means to find out and afford Gurren's. And if not, well, some research material that would help Lady Tsunade in her hobby of bloodline recreation was always welcomed. That was also why Anko quite admired the administration of the village on the other side. Their ninjas would be hard-pressed to betray them, not because they knew of all the precautions against betrayal the village had, but because the benefits the village provided could simply not be found anywhere else. Gurren slowly slid off Anko's fist, falling down onto the ground like a marionette whose strings were cut while Naruto watched with wide, disbelieving eyes at the spectacle. That easy? He grimaced, looking as if he was constipated. Anko grinned. After surviving Lady Tsunade's boot camp, dealing with scrubs like this should pose no problem to your awesome sister, she proudly proclaimed to the world without any shame, putting her hands on her hips and straightening her back while raising her nose high into the sky. Naruto could only groan, not in the mood for Anko's boasting. "Why were you so late?" he petulantly asked while starting to slowly cancel the chakra cloak around him, trying to make the transition as gentle as possible for his body. "I had to deal with a lot of thugs all around the town. Killing them was easy, but finding them took time." Anko's eyes softened. "I had faith in your ability to survive, you know. Plus, getting his stuffing beaten out of him in a serious, life-threatening battle was good training for him. When sparring against me, he knows there is no danger of him dying no matter how much I hurt him. This will be good for his growth. No pain, no gain, as they say. It was definitely a delight to watch, too." She inwardly snickered. Not that he has to know about that particular part. Naruto smiled, taking his well-earned praise. Unfortunately for him, this was also the moment when his chakra cloak fully dissipated, causing him to feel as if a bijou smashed him. The strain on his body was enough to make him slump onto the ground and disable him from any kind of movement. At most, Naruto could move his lips and eyes, and even that was kinda hard for the exhausted boy. Recognizing that the after effects from the bijou cloak started to kick in, Anko created a shadow clone that proceeded to unceremoniously put Naruto on her shoulder, not minding his painful wincing or silent protests. The boy was hurt badly during his fight, and while the chakra cloak healed him, now that its effects were gone, Naruto's body felt all the trauma it was forced to go through. It was overly sensitive, and even the slightest of motions brought extreme pains to the boy. "Oh, man up! I can't leave your helpless self here, in the middle of the battlefield." The real Anko rolled her eyes. She didn't know Raiga Kurosuke, but the man was fast. As such, Anko decided it would be better not to leave any sort of temptation lying around. Who knows if the man would have used Naruto as hostage once he found himself in deep shit. Anko's clone then approached the paralyzed Gurren and gently took her body into a princess carry, ignoring the intense and pain-filled glare the woman was giving her. She couldn't just uncaringly slump her over her shoulder. All that held Gurren's lower and upper body together were her abdominal muscles, which were a mangled mess. "Get well, kiddos!" Anko exclaimed, playfully swatting Naruto's butt with a massive grin, causing the blonde to spasm and thrash from the intense pain that surged through his body. He felt that swat all the way on the skin of his scalp. It hurt like a bitch. Aware that Naruto was silently cursing her in his head, Anko was satisfied and sent the clone off on its way. Now then, she looked around. Where to next? Anko mused to herself, but her question was answered a moment later when she winced from memories of her clone that just popped out of existence. Hinata's location was found. Anko approached the edge of the bridge and slowly walked on its side, heading towards the place where Hinata faced her opponent. Anko didn't instantly reveal her presence, though. She first observed for a minute, briefly wincing in pain every time she heard the melody of the flute. The genjutsu wasn't very effective against her. After all, it was Anko who taught Hinata how to properly counter them, and after Lady Tsunade's training, this pain was nothing special. But it was still akin to an annoying sting. Especially so, because Anko could and did turn her pain receptors off after the redhead's jutsu first hit her. But it was to no effect. The pain caused by this genjutsu was more mental than physical. Hinata was faring well. The girl had no wounds on her body. She nimbly and gracefully evaded every attack of her opponent, but Anko could see the small tremors in Hinata's body. The girl was obviously gritting her teeth hard to resist the accumulated pain, and it was putting a lot of strain on her mind. It only made the fact she was not yet hit, despite facing 3 opponents, that much more admirable. Hinata's opponent. Anko almost blanched when she noticed the marks of activated cursed seal spread on the redhead's body. That at least explained whose flunkies were these ninjas. If it was her past self, she would no doubt already jump at the redhead, screaming like a monkey while trying to kill her in a blind rage full of hate. Alas, that part of Anko was beaten out of her by Lady Tsunade. Instead, Anko carefully analyzed the situation. The redhead wasn't hurt either, as Hinata didn't manage to get past the 2 hulking humanoid summons. The girl was trying to mask it with all the vulgar things she screamed at Hinata, but she was subtly using her speech to cover her gasping for air. Clearly, she was utterly exhausted. So that is why she already used the seal, huh? Somebody is running on fumes, Anko proudly thought. Based on Gurren's prowess, if the Bluinette was the leader, the redhead, as her subordinate, should be at the low to mid Jonin level. The fact Hinata could fight her to stalemate and even force her to activate the seal. Anko was immensely proud. The girl desired a cookie, and Anko would make sure she would get one. But the fighting style of the redhead, I gotta capture her too. Anko unwillingly thought, a bit of dissatisfaction welling up in her heart. On one hand, the girl probably had a lot of information on Orochimaru, and would no doubt be a great asset with her ability to weaponize sound waves without any sort of device. On the other hand, Anko felt this need to beat her up the second she saw the activated cursed seal. Obligation or personal satisfaction, that was the question. And Anko had a hard time deciding which to choose. The battle between Hinata and her opponent intensified, and Tayuya decided to activate the second stage of her cursed seal, causing her skin to darken and horns to grow from her head. Anko's eyes widened at the sight. Orochimaru improved the cursed seal to this degree. Her jaw slightly dropped. It was ridiculous. The redhead became twice as strong as before while nature energy was being sucked into her body. It wasn't Sage Mode, that much Anko could tell. It was some kind of inferior bastardization of the real thing, but it still provided a substantial boost to the user. Then again, I doubt Orochimaru is generous enough to not incorporate some nasty hidden features. Anko wryly thought while rubbing her Ray remastered former cursed seal, remembering the piece of his soul that Ray pulled out of its original version. But Anko didn't have time to reminisce about the time when her time changed for the better. It was time to intervene in the fight since Hinata, as good as she was hiding it, was becoming too tired to continue without getting hurt. And in this kind of fight, where both fighters are in a stalemate, one wound would most likely decide the winner. Anko hid behind the corner and quietly used the summoning jutsu while trying to make as little smoke as possible, calling forth a yellowish snake. "Pochi!" Anko grinned, causing the snake to disgruntledly hiss at her. "Why did you call me, bitch?" Pochi grumbled. He disliked Anko since he was old enough to understand he was stuck with the name Pochi, because his parent had the bright idea to let Anko name him. "I need you to dig yourself a hole in the ground." "Fuck you!" Pochi hissed out, but Anko simply ignored him. "And sneak attack the dark-skinned redhead when she is about to play her flute. Make sure to snatch it from her since it is her primary weapon. Can you do that for me?" she asked with a small, gentle smile. As rude as he was, Pochi was always her favorite tsundere. "Fine." Pochi petulantly averted his gaze. Anko was still his summoner, so he supposed he was duty-bound to help her with her insignificant problems. Pochi submerged into the bridge, using his earth release. This was the reason why Anko chose him among all of her many summons. Pochi was born with an incredible innate talent for earth manipulation, which made him into an incredibly good and undetectable ambusher. "Time to do my part, I guess," Anko sighed. Not far from the place where Anko was hidden, the battle between Hinata and Tayuya was starting to enter its deciding moments. Tayuya entered the second stage of her cursed seal, getting a boost in both potency and volume of her chakra, which made her genjutsu that much more impactful. Hinata barely dodged the claws of one of Tayuya's summons, flinging a kunai at Tayuya, who leisurely sidestepped it. Tayuya's second summon, the one looking like a mummy, suddenly rushed at Hinata, who was still mid-air, and threw a punch at her. Hinata managed to start Kaiten, countering the force in the punch, sending it back at the summon and toppling him to the ground. She was, however, forced to stop her Kaiten and twist her body mid-air because a gray worm was almost upon her, and she had no intention to let herself be hit by it again. Hinata landed on the ground in a crouch, and her eyes widened as her Byakugan noticed the smirking Tayuya taking a deep breath, about to start playing her flute. "I am trapped!" That's when Hinata realized her position. Gray worm above her, turning its head towards her. The clawed summon with the bare torso in front of her, already starting his next attack, and the mummy summon to her right, releasing the second gray worm that was on this way to attack her. If Tayuya managed to pin her down for 2 seconds with pain, there was a high chance Hinata would not be able to avoid the following attacks. Tayuya inwardly cheered and Hinata braced herself. Both girls were utterly flabbergasted when in the next moment, both summons were blown away into the air by a shockwave so strong, it took them a second to realize how much damage was caused to them before they poofed away. Tayuya suddenly found herself trapped as a yellow snake tightly coiled around her body, locking her in place. Worst of all, it snatched her flute from her hands as she was about to play. It was the moment when her hold on her flute was the weakest, as she had to use her fingers to cover holes on her flute to produce certain sounds, meaning she couldn't muster any sort of resistance when the snake's jaws suddenly pulled the flute out of her fingers. Not even her enhanced physical prowess from the second stage of her cursed seal was any help, and Tayuya realized she was fucked. Hinata suddenly realized Anko was crouching in front of her with a proud smile. It was obvious the woman saved her from the defeat, and Hinata was very grateful for that. "Well, look at that." "You did well, girl," Anko praised, ruffling Hinata's hair. "Leave the rest to me." Hinata tiredly nodded and weakly smiled before she let go of her intense focus, passing out. Withstanding the momentary intense pains caused by Tayuya's genjutsu while fighting the summons, was way above her pay grade. She only stayed conscious because of her mental fortitude. Any ordinary genin would have fainted from the pain long ago. Ah, well, Anko stood up, seamlessly creating a shadow clone that started tending to Hinata, using a spiritual healing technique that would alleviate the mental pain of the girl. The original Anko didn't want to think about it. Such advanced stuff always brought her headaches. Better leave it to clones. What to do with you? Anko gave Tayuya an appraising look, threateningly narrowing her eyes and subconsciously licking her lips in a way that made the redhead shudder before she even realized it. Tayuya was slowly coming out of her shock, realizing the situation she found herself in. Her summons were all taken out and she didn't have her flute. "Welp, I am fucked, ain't I?" she fearfully thought. The fact it was Orochimaru's disciple, the snake summon, was a dead giveaway, who was supposed to hate everything even remotely connected to the guy in front of her, made Tayuya quite clear about the fate that is awaiting her at Anko's hands. "Just kill me already." Tayuya resignedly grumbled, scowling at Anko. It took a supreme effort to not add bitch to her sentence. Anything that would most likely earn her torture was to be avoided in her current situation, though. She tried to wiggle out of the snake coiled around her, but it was just a futile effort. "Oh? So eager to die?" Anko teased, slowly walking closer to the restrained redhead. Pochi suddenly jerked his head, throwing the flute at her, and when Anko expertly caught it, any hope of escaped Tayuya. "Not really." Tayuya sighed. "It doesn't matter. The mission is a bust. Even if I return, at worst I will be punished in a way that would make me beg for death." Tayuya knew well about the many ways ninjas, and especially kunoichi, could be punished in sound. She was not eager to be on the receiving side. That was the whole point of becoming one of the strongest ninjas of the village. Or at best, I would be killed outright in a painless and quick way. Why work for Orochimaru then? Anko furrowed her eyebrows, wondering what kind of masochists her former mentor was gathering. "I can't. Anyone who has the cursed seal can be killed any time Lord Orochimaru desires." Tayuya irritably answered in a low, complaining tone. She didn't like the weirded out and careful look Anko was throwing at her. "I am not a masochist, damn it!" she inwardly screamed. "So, Orochimaru implemented a kill switch into his cursed seal? Huh. Who would have thought he retained enough mental clarity to do something smart like that?" Anko amusedly hummed before widely grinning at Tayuya, who suddenly got a bad premonition. "If I managed to disable the kill switch in the cursed seal, would you be willing to change sides?" Anko asked, her grin only widening. The Senju household could use a maid, and Tayuya had to resist the loud instinctual "fuck you" that wanted to exit her throat. Sasuke kicked towards Kidomaru's face. His foot was naturally blocked as he expected. He fought the six-armed creep for a few minutes now, and gained quite the knack for predicting his movements with his Sharingan. Using the forearm with which Kidomaru blocked his kick, Sasuke propelled his body towards the ground, twisting his body mid-air to land on his feet into a crouch before he used the momentum to spring himself back at Kidomaru. Sasuke would never use this tactic against somebody who fought back. It would have been too dangerous to get to such close proximity even against a Jonin who has only 2 arms, not to mention one who has 6 and can expertly control them. Unfortunately for Kidomaru, he wasn't intent on fighting back, and Sasuke deemed going up and personal safe enough. Sasuke's fist raised its path through the air, heading towards Kimaru's chin, while Sasuke's Sharingan lazily spun, analyzing every twitch in Kidomaru's muscles in order to come up with the best strategy. As expected, Kidomaru again lazily blocked Sasuke's punch, and was promptly surprised when Sasuke used the sudden stop in his momentum to flip his lower body higher than his upper body and sent a strong kick at Kidomaru's chest. As surprised as Kidomaru was, he was still a Jonin and had 5 more arms at the ready. Sasuke didn't get more than a slight widening of his eyes as a reaction before his kick was blocked. again. Kidomaru gave Sasuke an amused look, knowing the kid's combo ended there because he simply lacked the necessary momentum to continue. What he didn't expect, however, was Sasuke whipping out kunai and throwing it at Kidomaru point blank while his body was slowly starting to fall towards the ground. As he casually leaned his head to the left, letting the kunai harmlessly pass by his cheek by an inch, Kidomaru had to admit the kid deserved a bit of praise. He even used his body's descent to cover his action of taking out the kunai, making his opponent notice at the last possible moment. Unfortunately for him, Kidomaru had the best eyes out of the Sound Four, and noticing things was his specialty. That's why, when he noticed Sasuke's slight smirk, he got confused. At least until Sasuke in front of him disappeared in a burst of smoke, from which immediately a kunai quickly emerged with a great velocity. Kidomaru was utterly unable to react due to its incredible suddenness, and the kunai hit his throat, before uselessly bouncing from his golden armor. Sweat rolled down Kidomaru's forehead as he realized he would have been a goner if he didn't have a thin layer of his armor on his skin. He didn't get time to ponder about it, as not even a split of a second later, he felt the air currents behind him shift, causing him to hurriedly turn around with his arms defensively in front of his face. The first thing Kidomaru noticed after turning around were two excited red eyes with 3 tomos madly spinning in them. The second was Sasuke's foot getting through his hastily raised defense, pushing through all of his arms, and then Sasuke's foot smashed into Kidomaru's face with his entire weight behind it. Kidomaru's body lifted from the ground as he was headfirst sent flying back from the impact before he hit the ground, which shook him out of his shock. He bounced from it, using it to flip himself back onto his feet, holding his bleeding nose with one of his hands, staring at Sasuke in bewilderment. "Wah dat?" Kidomaru exclaimed through his nosebleed. He was naturally not much injured. His face couldn't have a thick enough layer of his armor covering his skin to prevent all the damage, but it did mitigate most of it. He was more surprised that Sasuke devised a way to get through his defenses than hurt. Before Sasuke could even start contemplating if he should answer, Kidomaru got another shock of a lifetime when a kunai smashed into the right side of his neck with such power he choked and bent his head to the right. Needless to say, this scared him shitless. A split second later, Kidomaru was already turning around, brandishing his arms in an attempt to hit whoever sneak attacked him. The attacker, however, just jumped back, evading Kidomaru's reckless flailing of his hands. "Anko?" Sasuke furrowed his eyebrows at the scene, marveling at the masterful use of distraction he provided to sneak in a killing blow. Just a pity Kidomaru's armor stopped the kunai from doing anything more than going skin deep and drawing a bit of blood, while also giving him neck cramps because of how much brutal strength Anko used in that swing. "She would sooner break his neck than slice it." Sasuke's sweat dropped. "As expected from Lady Tsunade's apprentice." And his lips twitched. Kidomaru found himself subconsciously shivering. He knew best how close he came to death. "That could have either broken my neck or slit my throat." He fearfully gulped, not daring to let Anko leave his sight while reinforcing the armor all over his body. That was not the main problem, however. Kidomaru might not be a chakra sensor, but he was the most observant member of the Sound Four, and the woman managed to sneak up on him, only letting him notice because the kunai already impacted his throat. Sasuke was at this point half forgotten by the six-armed man. The boy posed almost no threat compared to the woman who almost killed him without him even realizing how. "Heh, so you are the last member of the Sound team? Well, the crystal user is already defeated, and the redhead decided to side with us after some gentle persuasion." Anko smiled like sunshine. "In short, you are already fucked, Spider Boy." Kidomaru would obviously not believe an enemy. He mentally contacted his spider summon on the bridge that allowed him to target Tazuna through the heavy mist with pinpoint accuracy, and found out the woman told him the truth. "Ah, I knew Tayuya was a bitch, but to think she is also stupid enough to betray us. Screw this shit, I'm out." Kidomaru wryly whispered before he quickly threw a smoke bomb under himself and started running away. Fighting a woman that managed to incapacitate Gurren in one punch? That was way above his pay grade, even if the supposed attack was a sneak attack. Sasuke wanted to pursue the six-armed man, but Anko's hand landed on his shoulder, stopping him in his tracks and making him give her a pondering look. He had no idea why Anko didn't pursue the man. She was definitely faster and stronger than him. She could permanently take him out of the picture with ease. When his Sharingan eyes landed on Form, now that she was so close, they widened. "You are just a clone," he exclaimed in surprise. Partially at the fact that he didn't notice from the start, despite possessing fully matured Sharingan, and partially at how ridiculous it was for Kidomaru to run from a clone. But the six-armed creep didn't know that. Anko snickered. "Deception is ninja's biggest weapon. Remember that, Sasuke-chan." She condescendingly patted his head, making him click his tongue in annoyance. "You used the sneak attack to paint an illusion of your superiority. Neat." Sasuke nodded in understanding, a bit awed at how easily she screwed with Kidomaru's head. A shadow clone would pop upon being hit. Even if Anko was an S-rank ninja, her shadow clone would be utterly outmatched against a Jonin of Kidomaru's caliber. Not because it didn't have the necessary firepower or experience to deal with him, but because each hit was fatal for it. Well, it's not like retreating was a bad move on his part. He failed the mission but won the battle. It's not a total loss for him. Anko leisurely shrugged, taking Sasuke's hand into hers while starting to heal his busted knuckles. "What do you mean?" Sasuke asked, not understanding how Kidomaru supposedly won the battle. "His master must be immensely interested in you since he was afraid to hurt you. If that sorry excuse for a failed experiment was serious, you would be defeated in under a few minutes. With this fight, he measured your combat capabilities, so it is not like he is returning with empty hands," Anko explained. Then it's probably good I held back," Sasuke proudly said, a bit of arrogance seeping into his tone, which was instantly smacked out of him with a prompt swat to the back of his head. "I know. You did quite well while using only taijutsu." Anko's clone hummed with mirth dancing in her eyes as the young Uchiha glared at her and rubbed the back of his head. "You want to say you watched the entire fight without helping me?" Sasuke exclaimed in bewilderment, quite miffed. The whole battle he was waiting for reinforcements, aware he couldn't possibly win against Kidomaru as he was now. And yet, said reinforcements were just watching and enjoying his struggle? How was that fair? "Meh. Was a good experience for you even if your opponent didn't fight back. And you can't say I didn't interfere. I attacked the second I saw you were out of taijutsu options." Anko's clone rolled her eyes at her butthurt disciple. "Good lot that did. You barely injured him," Sasuke petulantly muttered, childishly averting his gaze. He knew this was unfair to the clone, but he didn't really care for the small details right now. Such a bloodthirsty kid. Must run in the family. Anko sighed, mockingly shaking her head, knowing it made Sasuke even more irritated. Alas, the Uchiha brat long ago had his temper and outward hatred of all things Itachi beaten out of him by Anko. He didn't dare to do anything but grit his teeth when he understood Anko's reference. That said, Sasuke was well aware Anko did not mention it, only to tease him, but also to make sure he got his emotions under wraps, so others wouldn't be able to use them against him. "Cheh, no fun? I honestly thought you would flip with so much adrenaline still coursing through your blood." Anko pouted when Sasuke stayed relatively calm, making him nervously sweat drop. "Anyway, Sasuke, you say I let that creep go, but aren't you forgetting something?" Sasuke furrowed his eyebrows and looked at the clone in confusion, noticing how she playfully smiled while playing with the kunai she used to attack Kidomaru. Seeing that he is still confused, Anko scoffed and knuckled Sasuke's head in irritation. "Not even knowing your teacher's specialty, why the heck did I take you under my wing again?" She grumbled. "I am one of the very few poison specialists in Konoha, you brat." Just because you don't care for the finer things in life doesn't mean you should completely disregard them. Sasuke's eyes suddenly snapped back at the kunai in Anko's other hand and widened. She might not have managed to get through Kidomaru's armor enough to seriously injure him, but the tip of the kunai was slightly bloody. "Hey," Anko noticed the widening of Sasuke's eyes and smirked. "Yeah, the failed experiment will be glad if he gets to his master in time for his funeral. He has at best 24 hours. Tick-tock, hey, hey, hey." Anko gleefully cackled. She wasn't about to tell Sasuke that Kidomaru would have to keep his second stage of the cursed seal activated if he wanted to get even those 24 hours, which was basically an impossible feat. The Spider Boy is fucked. He just doesn't feel it yet. Anko inwardly snickered. I wonder how long will he last until he succumbs to the excruciating pain. He should be starting feeling the start of a dull ache in a few minutes that will only get worse as the time goes on. Ah, a pity I will never know, she thought with a bit of disappointment. In hindsight, this poison might be a good way to train the brat's pain tolerance. Just gotta administer the antidote before they actually kick the bucket. Now that cheered her up.